Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Polycarbonate Ceramic Alloys vs. Magic, written by FarmWitch4275. Squad, stand ready! The sergeant barked as his men stomped their feet in attention. How did it come to this? How did they beat our armies so badly? I understand my discontent with the Eldari Imperium over the centuries, but how did it get this bad? How was it so easy for them to do it? One last question remained in my head. Ready, rifles! The sergeant barked again. The 10 men at his command prepared their single-shot bolt-action weapons of fire in perfect synchronization as they loaded a single cyanide-laced bullet. It was a typical affair. The Eldari Imperium would search the stars for other life forms, and when we found them, we would open portals to their worlds. We found humanity, and within weeks we were ready for the first assault. The first portal opened, and a legion of 5,000 men marched through it, massacring a large city with impunity. Front rank, kneel! The sergeant barked again, and the 5 men in the front dropped to one knee. The first city fell, limited to no resistance as it seemed somewhat unpopulated. Either that or the humans had the means to rapidly evacuate. Either way, only a few thousand dead or captured. The second portal opened. 2 legions of us this time. The second city fell with limited effort, and we noted this time how it was mostly evacuated, protected by limited security forces. Though we faced casualties, it was negligible at best. Present arms! The sergeant ordered, and the 10 men raised their weapons at the Elf King, my former master, High King Tarius VII. At the time, we thought humanity was minimal at best, a staggeringly low force of only a few million souls present on that world, a newly minted backwater species on a new planet. We thought them a simple-minded animal with limited capability. How wrong we were. We offered them surrender. In exchange for their lives, we offered them slavery of servitude. At the time, it would have been an easy way out. Take aim! The rifles moved in unison, half aimed at the High King's head, the other at his chest. A surprise, to say the very least. We thought nothing of it. We brought in, via 6 more portals, 10 legions more to reinforce our position. That was a military force of 100,000 men, beasts, and mages. Humanity's retaliation was beyond merciless. Flying machines with bladed rotating wings flew overhead and obliterated an entire legion in the space of moments. Our mages cast the heat metal spells as they always did. Heat metal was the mage's most potent spell, and it caused enemies to boil in their armor or drop their weapons. This time, it did nothing. Fire! The sergeant ordered, and a volley of shot rang out. The High King slumped against the ropes and held him to the post as a splatter of blood and wood splinters impacted the wall behind him. Human snipers picked off officers from miles beyond the combat zone, sending our forces into mass panic as their commanders' heads suddenly exploded. Human armored beasts known as tanks rolled onto the battlefield and delivered explosives right into the midst of our armies from far beyond the range of any major spells. Shield wall spells, groundlock spells, any spell would simply dissipate or be worthless against the torrent of steel. Within a few hours, 10 legions lay in ruins. Whatever commanders or mages failed to be killed in the fighting were captured and mercilessly tortured until they revealed to the humans everything. Next, prisoner! The sergeant barked as the High King's corpse was removed and a new post put in the place of a sniffling, begging ratkin diplomat stood for his punishment. I was the only survivor of this war. My men and I saw the massive devastation firsthand and wondered what kind of hell awaited us. These humanity's first tanks drove through our lines. I ordered my men to drop their weapons and hold their hands up. Any who refused were mercilessly cut down by advancing tanks. We were surrounded in moments, heat metal spells and various others harmlessly dissipated on their hulls, and the tanks marched ever onward. "Squad, stand ready!" The sergeant barked above the disparate cries of the wreck-and man. I could no longer take it and left the area, returning to the cafeteria where the last legion of the Eldari were holed up, having officially joined the human military. It was strange seeing Ratkin, beastmen, and elves working alongside humans. One such elf mage, now wearing a pilot's flight suit, was showing off at the dining table with a few others as she made a perfect pitcher of coffee with a snap of her fingers, effortlessly levitating filled cups to delighted recipients. I went to the administration building and spoke to my fellow general, a human. "Martin," I spoke somewhat weakly. "Oh, good morning, Drusus. There an issue?" he asked, the delighted man in his mid-50s smiling at me. "I have a question or two. Care to answer them?" "Sure." He gestured to a seat in front of his desk. "How did you beat us so easily? Heat metal spells. How did heat metal spells not work? Before you could easily disarm entire regiments or scorch men in their armor, why did you not suffer the same fate?" "Heat metal, He fumbled about and found a manuscript I gave him, then another, more modern-looking book. He looked at it for a bit more. Here it is. Our ships and planes are made of a combination of polycarbonate ceramic alloy known as carbolite, vexillon, stratium, and regicite. There's not metals, They are synthetic polycarbonate ceramic alloys designed to be resistant to temperatures of any kind. Space-age alloys, meant for starships. Not metal, no heat." It can't be that simple," I said, frowning darkly. "Nope, magic may be magic, but it does not change the facts. It's still subject to the laws of physics. If you have a spell that casts a ball of fire and you do so against an object that is immune to fire, well, what exactly would that do?" he said while looking over his notes. I just grumbled a response. "If you have a spell that heats metals or other objects, but you do so against an object that can withstand temperatures at or above the surface of a star, what exactly did you do? Titanium, tungsten, steel all suffer the trappings of well-placed spell. Polycarbonate ceramic alloy made for starships, not so much." I again grumbled in response. "If you had caught us about 100 years ago, you would have caused serious damage. We would still have won, but you would have caused severe enough injury that we would have called it a draw at the very least. But now," he chuckled. I just shook my head in disappointment. 100 years ago, your shields would have deflected our standard bullets. But now we have railgun slugs that can accelerate a projectile to 0.02% of the speed of light. No shield can withstand that, can it? What level of concentration can your mages produce that can stop a projectile that has the equivalent force of 500 tons of explosives? An alloy specifically designed to be immune to heat and cold, facing off against spells designed to heat or cool. Think about it. Can you heat an object that can only be frozen? Can you cool an object that can only be hot? I'm afraid it is that simple." He smiled at me. I raised my head and slumped and frowned. "Wait, did you say starships?" "Yeah, I did." He moved over to the window and showed me. The sight floored me. It was a ship, a massive ship, at least a mile in length, quietly hovering above the world. "You didn't honestly think that was our only world, did you?" I passed out right there. End of story. Story number 2. The Service of Humanity, written by Battlelocks _. You know, I'm old enough that I remember Earth before all of this. It wasn't always like this. At least, we would look up and see the stars, not an array of information FTL relays. We dreamed of traveling beyond our planet, to the moon, to Mars, and far beyond. We dreamed of the glories of space adventure, dashing smugglers, heroic warriors, daring pilots, plucky rebels, the whole 9 yards. In my childhood, I went to bed wrapped in a Star Wars blanket, with a lightsaber nightlight plugged into the wall. My dad drank out of a USS Enterprise mug. My sister was obsessed with a telescope and astronomical photography. Her proudest moment was capturing an image of the pillars of creation. And for generations, we watched the successes and failures of leaving our humble planet with bated breath. My grandparents spoke of the heroes of Apollo 11 with a glimmer in their eyes. My parents were haunted by the memories of the broadcasts of Challenger and Columbia. Our generation was astounded by the reusable rockets and first commercial rockets. That was humanity. We obsessed over what we saw and could not have. And after 70 short years, we died, leaving behind our hopes and dreams for our children. Now look at us. We have access to space for what, 100 years now? And thanks to this all-new fancy medicine, I've been around for all of it. I was barely 100 miles from Houston when the Parthian landed and initiated first contact. I'd read the news articles and watched the countless videos of speculation about where humanity would fit in the great galactic tapestry. We would be the violent warrior species, feared by all and barely kept in check by the combined might of the Galactic Federation? Clearly not, given how soundly the weak and pathetic Sespeleth defeated us during the scathing of Trimora. Would we be the inventors, the tinkerers, the scientists? Hardly. The primitive Zaltan people were just climbing out of their neon oceans at the same time as the Roman Empire was created, and they managed to discover faster-than-light travel before Byzantium fell. But surely we would be the diplomats, the smooth-talking, charismatic species of the galaxy, loved by many and trusted by all. We thought that we were certainly fit in that role, and for a while we did. Unfortunately, since the Federation had been extremely stable for 20,000 years, the last thing they needed was skilled diplomats. So, what are we now? Customer support. Unbelievable! We have the breadth of the galaxy to explore, and we are stuck here. Our best and brightest can only hope to rise to the ranks of, IT support. Didn't you have dreams? Didn't you think that you would be more than this, Jim? Jim, are you listening to me? I asked. Jim didn't look up, but instead continued to mindlessly twirl his rapidly cooling leftover spaghetti, where he sat opposite me in the break room. Jim! What? Sorry, were you talking to me? I can't give you a raise, Jim said. I rolled my eyes. I'd never figured out how that young kid ended up being my boss. I was asking if you had any grand dreams of space, like I did when I was a kid. Explained. What? No, we're good customer support. It's what we do. You should be glad that we have a role in the galaxy. Now, get back to work. He stood and dumped the rest of his lunch in the trash bin. I sighed and stood slowly, my newly replacing joints squeaking. It was a short walk back to my desk, where I put my headset back on and sighed again. I already had a backlog of calls waiting to be taken. You've reached Earth Informational Support Systems, FTL Drive Division. How can I help you today? I asked automatically. I had memorized the script decades ago. The voice that came through the other end was harsh and artificial, a remnant of our ancient translation software. Still, the content was intelligible enough. The client was angrily describing how their hyperdrive was not starting up. I sighed inaudibly and pinched the bridge of my nose. Have you tried turning it off and on again? The client stopped talking, and I heard a rapid succession of switches and buttons being activated, followed by the telltale hum of a functional hyperdrive beginning to spool up. The caller didn't even thank me for hanging up. I hung my head and wept. End of story. I would quickly like to thank our Tier 5 patrons, Dragzoon WRE, Quantum Wednesday, Ambrose Cattell, Lord Ashrakal, Bushmaster 177, Casper Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, and Arcadian. Thank you very much.